Hi everyone, this is Chinny. Welcome back to another episode of Chin Up and Rise podcast. Today we are joined by an amazing guest, Maaike Doyer, who is also the founder of Epic Angels, the largest all-female investor community globally that is made up of a community of executives and operators who have built and expanded companies all over the world. Maaike is also a well-loved professor in SMU, Singapore Management University. She used to work for one of the top 4 consulting firms for close to 8 years before venturing out to start Business Model Inc., a global strategy and innovation firm together with 2 other co-founders. She's also one of the producers for the book that sold millions worldwide, Business Model Generation, before moving on to start Epic Angels in 2020. Hi Maaike, welcome to the set.
Thank you.
How are
Great
you?
to be here.
Yeah, how are you today?
Amazing.
Okay, so before we start proper, maybe you can give our viewers a more in-depth and a detailed explanation as to how you actually end up in Singapore.
Yeah, I'm still wondering that myself. How did I end up here? It's been quite a journey. I mean, I'm from the Netherlands. That's where I'm born. I'm an absolute number person. I studied econometrics and I started to work at the Big Four. I really enjoyed that. My latest job there was at PricewaterhouseCoopers in M&A. I mean, consulting, by the way, is, I think, one of the best careers you can have when you start going out there because you learn so much. But at a certain point in time, I learned like writing business plans is not changing the world. So I wanted to do that difference. Together with a colleague, we started Business Models Inc. First, very small in the Netherlands. We didn't even have an office. But indeed, we produced the book Business Model Generation, the famous business model canvas book. And that got a lot of traction all around the world, specifically as well from the United States. So we looked at each other and we're like, okay, if we're really interested in expanding into the US, one of us has to go. And that made me move to San Francisco. So that was an amazing journey. I've been living there for more than 5 years. And then at a certain point, indeed, after 10 years with BMI, I decided, you know what, it's time for change. I love changes. So I said, it's time for my exit. So I did my exit. And that's what caused me to move to Singapore 3 years ago. Actually, this week, exactly 3 years ago.
This week, this particular day? Or?
Yes, it was September 17, we came out of quarantine. So 14 days before, because it was in the middle of COVID and we still had to do hotel quarantine at that moment. Yeah.
Okay. There are so many things to actually unpack from that sentence that you said, which we will go through slowly in this podcast today. So first off, you mentioned that you're a numbers person, right?
Yeah.
I mean, personally, I do love math since young, but I have never thought that, accounting or consulting is the way to go for me, even though I do love numbers and math when I was younger. So actually, what made you, or like what drew you to math, or what about numbers that you like so much?
I wanted to be, what I like about numbers, I mean, it's hard to explain, right? Well, why do you like something? It was already when I was a little kid, math was my favorite topic. Even at, middle school, high school, I was always best in class. I was literally a year ahead from the other kids in my homework because I just really love doing that. So, it's hard to say why, right? But I just like numbers.
Right. Was there any influence in your family on your life?
No.
Okay.
I happened to be good at it and I just really enjoyed it.
Okay. So, having worked in corporate roles for so many years, so you were with PwC for about close to 8 years before you transited out to be an entrepreneur and actually start Business Model Inc. So how do you actually have that mindset shift straight away, being from corporate to being an entrepreneur?
That doesn't happen straight away, right? That's for sure. I was very scared to make that jump initially because I remember my friend and colleague from PwC, he already stepped out and was working on it. And he's like, you need to join our team. And I remember I was speaking with my husband and I was like, am I going to do it? Am I not going to do it? And my husband was, what do you have to lose? So, yeah, you're right? I mean, I can always go back to corporate. If I don't like it, if it turns out it's not for me, I can always go back to the things that I know. But let's just try it. I knew that I wanted to move out of the corporate world. I was in the partner trajectory. And so I was in that final stage. And that process is well, I don't really believe in the way that process is done. So I think it was good as well. Like that all came together for me to say, you know what, let's give this a try and see how it plays out for me.
Right. So what in that process do you actually not agree with for you to want to jump out?
Yeah. So when you go to partnership, and again, this is a long time ago, I hope it changed today. Although I'm not really sure. But what happens a lot is it really feels the partner trajectory is like it's a bit of a cookie cutter process. They want you to fit the mold. And they're going to squeeze you in all the dimensions to make sure that you fit right in that mold that they have designed. Whereas every individual is different. Every individual has different strengths and different weaknesses, of course. So I don't believe in this one approach that they're typically having. Another thing that I saw was when someone made it to partner, I saw so many people ending up in a burnout right in that first 1 or 2. Junior partner, I'm still not where I want to be, right? So that's what it felt. I mean, I remember when I handed in my notice, the senior partner was like, "Oh no, right? We had you on our list as one of our female high potentials because yes, they wanted to have more women in the partnership." And we really love your entrepreneurial spirit. That's what we really appreciate about it. I was like, but I have the feeling I can't really do something with my entrepreneurial spirit here because I feel I have to fit this weird mold that you're trying to put me in, right? So turned out, right, they really appreciated it, but that was a little too late.
Oh, okay. So actually they wanted you to keep it and not fit into that cookie cutter.
Yeah, but they never told me. They only told me when I left. Like, that's a little bit too late, right? If you would have told me a year ago, we could have worked. Like, how can we fit this entrepreneurial spirit that I want into what the organization wants, and then together?
Yeah, but I mean, it's for the better, right?
Oh, yes, for sure. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and you founded Business Model Inc. and you even produced the book as well to help so many others out there.
Yes.
Yeah, so what was the biggest change from being an employed to an employer?
Well, I think the real biggest change came when I moved from the Netherlands to San Francisco. So that was only a couple of years after.
Yeah.
And because if you're still in the Netherlands, I was still a consultant in the end, right? We did consulting in a complete different way, yes. And we were building the team and expanding the team. But moving from the Netherlands to San Francisco, that's where the real mindset shift came for me.
Yeah, so previously we had a chat before. So I actually asked you this one particular question where have you ever dealt with failures and your mindset and attitude that you actually adopt towards these failures? And you told me that you don't really view them as failures, but they are more of a pivotal moments in your business. Could you maybe elaborate a little bit more on what you mean by a pivotal change as compared to a failure?
Yeah, because for me, a failure, it has this negative connotation, and I don't see failure as something negative. So maybe that's why I look at it in a different way. For me, if a failure is something that you learn that it doesn't work, but you stay doing it. Yeah, that's not going to work, right? And then things will get hurt, people will get hurt, finances will get hurt, right? Something negative, like real negative, will happen. Luckily, I've never experienced anything of that. I mean, for me, for example, when I moved from the Netherlands to San Francisco to set up the office there, I just thought, okay, what I've been doing for the past couple of years in the Netherlands, I can just copy paste that into the US market. Well, that didn't work, right? So is that a failure? Well, from that perspective at that moment, yes, because it didn't work. I mean, it would have been a failure if I would have just been like, okay, well, then that's it. Now I go back to the Netherlands, right? I think when you see it as a pivot, like, hey, that's just something that doesn't work right now. I need to change something. And there's always a gazillion other ways on how you can approach it. So that for me is such a pivotal moment when you realize this doesn't work. Okay, I need to change something. And that makes a failure a pivot instead of a failure.
So what kind of attitude should we actually have or adopt when we are dealing with this kind of pivotal changes?
Think in options. Think in options for me is one of the most important things I think in life. In private work situations, every situation, there are always many ways how you can deal with something. Always. The single right solution simply does not exist. Even though a lot of people think there's only one solution, there's only one answer, that's just not true. There are always many other answers. And if you train yourself to always think in options, like, how else? Like, what else could I do? How can I do this different? I mean, this worked, but what could maybe be a better way? What could be a different way? Oh, this did not work. Well, then you're typically forced to change the way you were doing things. So the thinking in options is one of the things you really need to do.
No, so when we are actually in that situation, it is actually very hard for us to think in options, or it's very hard for us to, okay, so what's another way or another method I can actually adopt to solve this issue at hand? So how do you actually get newer ideas and alternative ideas if I'm already, stuck in a rut? Or what do I do then?
Yeah, because specifically if we're stuck, we're trying to look for that single right solution, for that one and only answer that gets us out of there. But I think it starts with accepting that one answer simply does not exist. And it really is about training your brain all the time. Like, how can we do things in a different way? And it starts with minor things as well. Like, hey, my husband's birthday is coming up in 2 weeks. How can we celebrate that? Well, we always do this, but what if, right? What if we do it different, right? It starts with, it literally is about everything. It doesn't have to be about failure, because if you only start to train your brain in a failure situation, it's going to be much harder, because you're scared and you don't always think, your thinking capacity is also reduced in a failure situation. You're in a stressed situation. But if you think about a birthday party, you're like, oh yeah, indeed, I have multiple options on how to throw a birthday party. So it really is about everything that you do, continuously thinking in options. What if?
Okay, so basically start small and be very conscious about the kind of options you're giving yourself, even from a day-to-day kind of thing.
Yes.
And do you think community is actually important with regards to this as well?
Community?
Yeah, having a community to bounce ideas off one another.
Absolutely. It's about, I just started another company as well, and I'm learning a lot there also, and I'm part of this community, so that's great. So, yesterday as well, I was like, hey, I'm looking into customer feedback. This is how I would normally do it, but share me your options, right? I just actively ask, what are other options? What I love these days, ChatGPT. Honestly, if you are about thinking in options, ask ChatGPT. I use it every single day about the most stupid things. And I never ask, give me an option for a birthday party. Then I would ask, give me 3 different alternatives for a birthday party that should meet ABC. Right. And I think even there, to train yourself to ask ChatGPT or Bard or any other open generative AI system, give me alternatives. That again helps you as well for small things, but also for big things.
Right. Even by using that, it actually helps you to refine your thinking, because when you're typing out the prompts, you got to think in specifics, like what you actually want ChatGPT, what kind of answers you want it to give you. Right. Yeah. So that is actually something that it's a great takeaway for many of us to actually think in options. Now, so growing up in Netherlands, you were actually you actually studied and you work in a more male-dominated kind of industry and an environment. So do you think that has changed the way you think and the way you decide on things in any way?
I never saw it as something strange or like even male dominated. It was just as it was. I didn't think about it at all. When I went to university, I think there were 4 girls in total, right? Studying econometrics. There's just no girl that was doing that. And I didn't really have a connection with the boys there either. So my friends were more in the other masters.
Okay.
And that's okay, right? So it's true. It's very male dominated, but for me, it was just as it was.
All right. Fair enough. And so transiting from BMI to Epic Angels, so what actually made you think that, okay, I've had enough of consulting. It's time for me to move on to another, business or another startup.
Yeah, do something else. I mean, I remember, how that went. It was literally when I was walking around in Mexico, I called my husband and I was like, I'm done. And he was like, uh-oh, what do you mean? So like, I think after 10 years, I was just like, I loved every single day of what I've been doing. I still love it, but it's just time for something different. I mean, I am also just maybe more of a thrill seeker. I love to really do things different, to move to different countries. I mean, sometimes my husband is like, oh, really? Right. There we go again. What now? Right. And in the end, he loves it. Right. He really appreciates it. But I know I'm definitely more than the average person, always looking for what else is out there. Because I just love everything that's out there. There's so many things you can't choose. Right. So I just love to explore the different things. So the decision was made for me to do my exit. So that happened. It was literally just a couple of weeks before COVID happened. So that was an interesting timing. With that, we had to leave the United States because we were in the US on my visa. Because when we moved from the Netherlands there, my husband quit his job to move with me to the United States. So that was amazing. And then he found a new employer within the US, and they were saying like, hey, have you ever considered going to Singapore? Because he would lose his work permit as well in the US because of my exit. So we had to move. And then his employer said, what about Singapore? And we're like, why not? So that's literally how we ended up in Singapore 3 years ago now. I gave myself some time to be like, okay, I'm not going to focus on one thing because I'm a very focused person. If I set my eyes on something, it's going to happen, right? And I'm really going for it. So I deliberately told myself for the first year, you're not allowed to commit to anything. You can only do short commitments, no long-term commitments. So no full-time job. And that's what led me into the rabbit hole of what became Epic Angels.
Right. And that's amazing. So you actually ended up in Singapore not by choice, but it's more of the option that the company your husband was working in. Yeah. And so the reason why I asked the question about, working in a male-dominated and studying in a male-dominated school and industry was because Epic Angels is now all female.
Yes.
Yeah. So I wanted to understand if there is any motivation at all as to why you want to start an all-female investor community, all-female angel investor community.
And it's funny because I remember in my other jobs and environments, there's always these women communities, and I always stayed far away from that. Yes. I was like, no, it's just not for me, right? I mean, I'm not, because I'm used to be together with all men and everything. I never mind, right? So why would you do something all women? So it's very funny that I now started this. How it started, so I'm this finance person. Yes. In my conversations with friends, also here in Singapore, I mean, what I really see, by the way, is the female power in Singapore is insane. Yes. The women here are so much more interesting than anywhere in the world. Not really. Right? My husband is also saying, like, I don't know what's happening here in Singapore, but the women they're power women, right? Yeah. And also, if you look at the percentage of female CEOs, the largest is here in Singapore. Yeah. Right, so that's amazing to see. So I've had many conversations with female friends that are all in executive positions, earning a good salary. But when it came down to finances,
they don't know anything.
No, they just didn't look at it, right? Often their husbands sort of automatically took care of it, and they were like, yeah, I might want to do something, but where to start? Oh well, whatever. So I saw that pattern very often coming by, and I mean, I've always been an educator. Already in the US, I was teaching at an MBA at the university, as you mentioned here, SMU also. So I've always been an educator. So like, what can I do around financial literacy, specifically for these executive women? Right? That was really the niche that I was focusing on, and that led me to Epic Angels, and I could really see, because I mean, Epic Angels, how it really started was I wanted to continue my own angel investment journey, because I was already doing angel investment in San Francisco. I mean, When you live there, it's almost difficult not to. It's so mainstream. It's literally like getting a coffee. And so when I got here, I wanted to continue my angel investing journey, and I went to different communities, and it just didn't feel right. It was pretty outdated, a little bit old-fashioned processes.
Yeah. And it's more of an elite thing, I would say,
Very
in
elite.
Singapore.
Yeah.
Yeah. And whenever people mention angel investing, oh, you're rich.
Exactly. I was saying, like, I've done 30 investments, and someone was looking at me like, "Whoa, Ray, you must be like crazy rich." And I was like, no, you don't have to be, right? You can. I don't think angel investing is about putting 50K, 100K in one startup. I think it's about diversification of your portfolio. And so that wasn't around here in the region. So I just said to a few friends, female friends, like, you know what, let's do this together. I know my way around startups. I've been working with startups for the past 15 years. So I'll find us some startups and we're just going to invest together. That was it. It was no intention to start anything there.
Okay.
And that's how we got started.
Right. So it was more of like a support group where everyone is just...
Yeah, because also, like, if I invest on my own, I don't have that much money, right? So I'm not putting 50 or 100K in one startup. So I needed these other women with me to be more interesting towards the startup. Plus, as a collective, it's more fun. But it was more just a group of friends. It happened to be all women, never intentional. It literally just happened that way. And we did our very first investment in 6 weeks. So that was interesting.
So it was more word of mouth that it got...
Only word of mouth. Yes. Right. But what also happened was startups knocked on our door. Like, you are female investors only. We need women on our cap table because all our investors are men. We need female investors.
Why is that?
Because the world is still dominated. The VC world is dominated by men, right? So the majority of the investors today is still men.
Yes.
Like, it's 95+%. So, and then the startups were like, we also need women. Because can you imagine, there's this female founder or female founders, then they have a board existing out of all men. So it's like, there needs to be at least one woman part of this board as well. And that's why they started to reach out to us, to Epic Angels. Like, we need this female leadership also in our board as our investor. And that's how that rabbit hole turned out to become
something big.
A whole organization, Epic Angels. Yes.
Wow, amazing.
Yeah.
And okay, so you touched on a few pointers. I have a few questions I had in mind. I'm trying to remember them. So the first one was, you mentioned that, you have a lot of friends who are executives, but they don't actually manage their own finances, or they don't actually do investments themselves. Any idea why that is the case here in Singapore?
It's often also because you're just not thinking about it. And I mean, I see it in our household. I'm the one doing all of that. I mean, why is my husband not doing it? Is he not capable of doing it? Yes, of course he's capable of doing it, but I just like it. Right. So I'm just the one that's doing it because I enjoy it more than he does. So he's super happy that I'm taking care of all of that because I just enjoy it. And my assumption is that that's what happens with a lot of women as well. If your spouse is just enjoying it a little bit more, great, right? Let him do it. Why not? But there is always a bit of this urge, like, but I want to know a few things about this as well, right? Like how to get started.
Yeah. So I think a lot of my viewers out there, they might not understand what angel investing is actually. Do you want to give a very brief description on what it actually is about?
What is angel investing?
What is angel investing?
I mean, one of the official definitions would be like, it's a high net worth individual that is supporting a startup where they're putting money in exchange for equity, in exchange for shares. That's the brief description. I mean, often the term high net worth is used because angel investing is very risky. It really is. So I always say never more than 5% of your total portfolio should go to angel investing because it is a very risky business. Because sometimes people ask me, but why should I not just do real estate or stock exchange? And you also need to do that.
All right.
This is just another
portfolio.
Exactly. It's all about diversification. So you're supporting that startup specifically in the early stage because the startup has an idea and they want to grow the company, but their revenue is not there yet to self-sustain. And in order to grow, and specifically to grow fast, they need the money in, right, to make sure that they can grow fast.
Okay. And typically, how long do you actually need to wait to see any true profit or gain from this investment?
Yeah. That's a good question. And that's changing as well. I say between 8 and 10 years.
Oh, wow.
So it's really long-term investing, what you're doing. IPOs are taking longer and longer. That's been the path in the past where, okay, we're waiting for the startup to go IPO, to get listed.
Yeah.
I mean, that's taking forever these days.
Yes.
I mean, what is it? Google went from start to IPO in 4 years. Stripe, how long is that in the market? Like 16 years or whatnot, still didn't do the IPO, probably lost their window, right? So if you're an early investor there, you're 14 years in already or so, right? So look at that. So what you see is that acquisitions are typically taking place earlier, around 5 years. That's definitely what's happening. And right now you see that there is a rise of so-called secondary shares, where in the stock market you can just easily buy and sell your shares. That is now moving into angel investing as well. I can see that that's a new trend into the private market.
How does that work?
So how it works, it's called secondary shares, like secondhand shares. And there are more and more platforms are getting into the market. Even with us with Epic Angels, if you invested, let's say, $2,500 in a specific startup and you want to get rid of it, you actually can. We've set up the legal framework that you can, if you have a buyer, you can just sell your shares.
Okay, interesting.
Yeah. So that market is becoming more and more liquid these days.
Okay. So with angel investing as one of the riskier options, right? And second thing that you mentioned is, somehow they turn out, people in Epic Angels, they are more, more older women.
Yeah,
you mentioned that.
Yes.
So do you think it's important to actually educate the younger generation in terms of investing or the term angel investing?
Yes, absolutely. I think, but that's more financial literacy for me. And it's not only angel investing, it's just a whole spectrum of investing and financial education.
Yeah, because for angel investing, you need to be an accredited investor, which means that you need to have a certain value of annual income and assets before you can actually be exposed to the community that you're in. So for example, if I'm an individual who will eventually be interested in angel investing, but I don't have the capabilities to be in Epic Angels, what are some things that I can do to actually expose myself to this kind of environment?
For example, we are always looking for is scouts. Scouts.
Okay.
Yes. And we have a few in the younger women that are like, oh, I want to be part of this ecosystem. How can I do this?
All right.
And as a scout, what that means is you literally help search to find those good startups that we can invest in as Epic Angels. So you're becoming part of the ecosystem. You're going to demo days. You're listening to accelerator programs or anything else. And that's how you scout the potential startups for us to invest in. And as a scout, you become part of the process within Epic Angels as well. So you can see how it goes from finding that startup all the way till the investment moment.
Okay, interesting. Okay, so another question that I have is, from all the way when you were in corporate all the way to now, there are many, many things that happen, in your life and many uncertainties that you actually have to embrace to get to where you are today. So the thing about Singaporeans is that we are taught to chase for certainty as stability in terms of studies, in terms of our career, for example,
relationship
as well. So how can you consistently tell yourself that it's okay to be uncertain about the future, and embrace it together, embrace that such that you can actually pursue for growth? Because I feel that growth comes with uncertainty and it's not comfortable.
I don't think certainty exists. Honestly.
Right.
I know that is what a lot of people think, I don't think anything in life is certain. There's so many things that can go wrong. I mean, look at the whole COVID situation.
Right.
Completely out of control for any of us, but it threw all our lives completely upside down at that moment. Nothing you can do about, right? And I think, it's hard. How do you do that, right? But don't strive for certainty. Certainty is fake. It's la la land, right?
Okay.
I mean, it really, it's not real. That's the same thing with writing business plans. I think writing business plans is also stupid, because what happens is you're like, okay, I have an idea. Let me write a business plan. And then you write it all out like this 30-page document. And then you're done and you feel like, ta-da, right? This is my roadmap. This is exactly what I'm going to do. But what happens? The first moment you walk out to the door and speak with a customer,
Gone.
your whole business plan is gone, right? Because it was a fake certainty. You feel really good, right? To write that all down and and this is step 1 and this is step 2 and this is going to be my revenue. It looks beautiful on a piece of paper. But again, when you step out of the door, gone. And that happens with your life as well.
Right.
So it is, of course, important to have a vision for yourself. But it's more about what makes you happy. And of course, what do you want to achieve? But what do you want to achieve for yourself, not for the outside world? As sometimes I see people that are,
That's a fine line.
like looking for certainty for their parents, maybe, right? Or for friends. But you shouldn't. You really need to look at what makes you happy as an individual and then go after that. And there's no straight line. It never, ever is. It would be boring as well, by the way.
So what did you do to actually find that out for yourself? Because as you're speaking, well, my motivation is my parents.
Yeah.
And it's very normal for Asians to think that way.
Yes.
And if you were to ask me what makes me happy, being able to retire them early makes me happy. So is that for them or is that for myself?
I think that is also in a way for yourself, right? But there are so many ways how you can make that happen. And then don't pick maybe the obvious way by going to work for a bank, right? But there are other ways as well on how you can achieve that goal, because that's great, right? Because I understand those values are deep, right? Like, hey, I really want to take care of my family. Indeed, that's values that we don't have in Europe. That honestly doesn't exist. I think it's a great value, and you should treasure that value. I think that is important, but you will only able to achieve that if you are happy in what you do. If you're not happy in what you do, you can't make your parents happy either. So that's
fully agree with what you just said. Now, touching on that, having been in New York and Silicon Valley to actually create the company from scratch when you were with BMI versus after you exit, you came to Singapore and you started Epic Angels from scratch again as well, right? What were some of the cultural differences and difficulties that you actually experienced between these two financial landscape and market?
It's completely different businesses, of course, that I started. So that is very different. The world was different because I started Epic Angels right through the whole pandemic. So that was also completely different at that moment. I think for San Francisco was also my very first time moving abroad. And even though I thought I understand the US because I was there so often and I understand how the US works, it's only when you really live there that you start to learn the nuances and how things are really different.
Yep.
Asia, I must say, I had a complete open mind because I went to Asia a couple of times. I spent a few weeks actually here in Singapore before as well, just for some of my work back in the day. So I knew a little bit about it. Was not the first time in Asia, but I didn't know that much. Right? I had a few holidays, and that's about it. And so I was super open-minded about everything in Asia. And I think that curiosity, that honest curiosity, I want to learn. I want to understand how this is different from Europe, how this is different from the US. And every country is unique. every country has beautiful things and also like maybe not,
Yeah.
right? and there, I don't believe the best country exists. I honestly don't. And for me, what's really important for myself as well is to keep that curiosity, that you are getting there open-minded, not with a way like, oh, this is, how I want to do things, because that's always how I've been doing it, but more like, okay, now let's be open for what this country has to offer and how it's different without any judgment, but really trying to explore and to learn. And that really helped me a lot on my Epic Angels journey as well.
Okay, that's nice to hear. And so being on you mentioned this word that you are actually very curious to learn. So I was listening to one of the podcasts that you had with Hester on the Asia Tech podcast. And she mentioned that the main difference between a female investor and a male investor is that females tend to be a bit more curious than males. Do you agree with that? And why is that so?
I think it's also because you want to have a bit more confirmation often, that you're asking more questions, also just to double check whether your own thoughts are correct or not. That makes you more curious, luckily, right? Because you're asking more questions like, hey, how does this really work? Is that the case? Because you're less going into your own assumptions, as sometimes men tend to do a bit faster. Like, this is the way to go.
What are the main few differences other than that, between a female and a male investor?
I call it that what I see in general is that women are a bit more risk aware. And so they... in
everything, not just in investments.
Yes, exactly. And a bit more cautious about the risks that are involved. So they do want to know more. Sometimes what I see is that a lot of women feel they need more education before they qualify to do it. I'm telling them, you really don't need the education. You already know everything. Like, it's not rocket science. It's your experience from your past already that gives you enough knowledge to do it. But women sometimes feel they need the education to be able to do something.
Right.
I think they might be able to do it faster.
Not wrong. And how does this affect them in making decisions? Because, sometimes females tend to be a little bit more emotional compared to male. So, and touching on that, Epic Angels are made fully female. They are all female investors, right? On the contrary, when you are looking at a VC, a venture capital, it is often encouraged to have both a male and female representations in the team, such that when you're making decisions, it's more balanced. Do you think that will affect Epic Angels in any way because we are all females?
In the end, you're making your own decision. I am not making a decision on behalf of anyone. I'm just presenting a startup. We give them insight. We connect the angels with the founders. We let them ask all the questions and we make sure all the questions get answered. But we're not making any decision. Everyone makes a decision as an individual. But the VC firm is different because that is more of a group decision that the VC firm as a group needs to decide, are we going into this startup, yes or no? Here it is an individual decision. So I think that's already a little different. And then now I forgot the remaining of your question.
I think you answered. You probably answered it. Yeah, and since Epic Angels was founded in 2020, what are some of the impacts that you guys actually managed to bring about to the current landscape?
Yeah, so we opened our door in November 21. And so early 21 is when we started with three of my friends, just the four of us. And we did our first investment, I think, in April 21. That's when we, really, but that was with a small cohort. Only in November, we opened our door for more angels. So now almost 2 years. What's the impact that we're making? What I see is that, all these women, we're now over 200 angels. So more than 200 women that actually started to learn. And are aware of angel and started to do angel investing. Also, next week, a press release is going out. We achieved $1 million deployed into startups in APAC. Right? So
Wow, okay.
yeah, that's a massive milestone
Wow.
that we're really proud of.
Okay.
And we're already at $1,200 right away because we did a very big 200K investment. I mean, they're transferring the money literally today. So it's all there already, but it just needs to be transferred from the syndicate to the startup. And then the paperwork is already signed. And so that's a 200K investment, which is massive. And that tipped us immediately far over the $1 million.
Wow.
And so that makes impact. And I think that is also why we love investing here in Asia. I mean, if I invest $5,000 in the US, gone, right, a day later. If I invest $5,000 in this region, in Bangladesh, for example, they can actually pay someone probably for a year.
Yes.
Right, with that money. So my impact goes way
lot
further
more.
than if I would do it somewhere else.
Okay. And that's also the reason why more and more people are actually coming over Singapore to do this kind of investments.
Yeah, and I think, we see that there's probably another difference with men and women. Women, yes, we want financial return. That's number one, right? That's the reason why we became an investor.
Mm-hmm.
But the number two is, well, while I'm investing, let's also make a positive impact here.
Right.
Because I remember the other day, we had a good startup, good founders. But if you looked at all the numbers, look perfect. No one was interested. And so then I started to have some conversations like, hey, why is no one interested in this startup? Because on paper, it ticks all the boxes.
Mm-hmm.
And that was because the whole impact element was completely missing. People were like, yeah, it's good, right? But I mean, there are other good startups as well that do good, but also make an impact and contribute more to society. And that element was missing for this startup.
Right. And I remember seeing this in on the website where you said that our angels are actually let me recite that again. Our angels are mostly not here for the profit, but they invest in the founders or in the people itself. So previously, I do have a speaker who's actually chairing this initiative with two others. She's female as well, and this initiative is more about impacting Singaporeans and trying to alleviate poverty in Singapore by raising financial literacy amongst the family. But of course, they are transiting towards a charity direction more than startups. Mm-hmm. Would Epic Angels be interested in something like a charity, or it's just going to be mainly startups and VCs?
I mean, Epic Angels is not set out for venture philanthropy, as it's called, right? That's not what we do. There are enough initiatives that do that, and that's amazing. And I definitely can see a fun cooperation maybe on any occasion. Yes, right? I can totally see that happening, but that's not what we invest in. We do invest for financial gains. That is our main driver. But again, a financial gain doesn't exclude any impacts. And I think it's that combination that is definitely our sweet spot.
Understood. And before we end, there is something that I would really love to ask as well. So there were a couple of times where you had to change to a completely new environment. In fact, every time you change your career or change your job, you're in a completely new environment. Do you think that is necessary for us to find happiness in what we do? And how often do you think we need to change our environment for that?
I think I'm one of those weird people that needs a lot of change.
Okay.
So I'm definitely not. I mean, on the other hand, I worked for a pretty long time at the Big Four. BMI was 10 years. Right. Although, of course, within there, I made a lot of changes, going from the Netherlands to Silicon Valley to New York. So there's been a lot of change within that were significant. Now here and moving to Singapore as such is a change. Epic Angels is a change. I mean, I just started another business this summer, which is in the travel industry. Okay. Which is a complete new business, but I'm an avid traveler. I mean, this weekend will be my country number 68.
Where will you be going to?
Brunei.
Brunei, okay.
Yeah, like one of the least visited countries in Southeast Asia.
Right.
And I have to, Timor-Leste and Brunei were the only two in Southeast Asia I haven't ticked yet. So like, hey, now I'm here. That's what I want to do. And that's again the curiosity in me. Right. Like, let's go, because no one ever goes to Brunei, right? So let's figure this out. But besides that, so I'm this avid traveler, always on the roads. I'm always helping everyone with planning their trips because I have all this experience and I know what I want. And so now I'm doing this as a profession as well. So I started an agency in travel business also.
Wow, okay.
Paper flower travel. So, and this is a super cool thing to do. Complete new industry for me. I like that, right? To really change this often. Epic Angels will still go strong. I'm not stopping there. I'm not reducing that, right? That will just go on. This is just another track that I'm on as well. So one doesn't exclude the other. I'm a big fan of the portfolio career, which I'm clearly on. But I also think you can only do that a little later in life, right? I would not encourage young people, young women to do that right away. I mean, although consulting in a way is also all about change. When I was a consultant, I loved it. That one day you were working for a bank, the other day you were working for consumer goods, then you were working for an electronics company, for a car company.
Right.
Complete different projects. Countries, different type of projects, different content. I love that. But I need to be challenged all the time. I get bored very easy. So, but that's me. I mean, again, there's many others out there that are like, no. I'm happier to be more
comfortable and more just one track.
Yeah, and there's no right or wrong. It's just a different personal preference, and I think you need to figure out what fits you the best.
I think that's a very good piece of advice. And being a founder of Epic Angels, BMI, and now your new travel agency, what are some ways that you can actually leverage to make sure that you have resources freed up to do other things?
I mean, that's a good thing, right? I mean, again, technology helps. I'm very big in automating tasks. ChatGPT is absolutely my co-pilot in everything. But I also have a personal assistant, a VA, a virtual assistant, Maureen, amazing, right? She helps with anything that I come across that I need help with. So that's fabulous as well. So I think indeed it's important because you shouldn't focus on all the nitty gritty yourself. It's better to
delegate.
Work on that. Yeah, to delegate and work on that as a team.
Okay. And last but not least, what are some advice that you can actually give to the listeners out there for those people who actually want to start their own company and maybe for those people who might be interested in angel investing in the future?
Yeah. Be curious. I think that is the number one advice. Really be curious. Don't take things for granted. Keep on asking why. Why are things the way they are? Why is it that in Singapore we're always expecting these things? What if I would do it different? What are the other options that are out there? And so don't stay with this one path that 90% of people are going through. Figure out what your individual path is. And if you stay close to yourself, you will not hurt anyone in that journey, right? Because that is important. If you really feel like, yes, this is me, then it will be okay in the end. So just be curious and don't go for the status quo. Just
don't be afraid of changes.
Yeah, because again, just what happened when I moved from corporate into the entrepreneurial life, you can always go back. And that goes for everyone. You can always go back.
Okay. Thank you so much for sharing. And I'm so glad to have you here on set today.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye. Thank you guys for tuning in to Chin Up and Rise. We have also collated the key pointers of today's episodes. All you can do is actually click the link down below to have access to all this. And you can also follow us on the social media handles down below for more content and update. Before you go, do remember to give us a like, share, and subscribe. And I will see you guys next time.